So Conor McGregor, so this story has been running obviously because it's in the Court of Criminal Appeal. But something really significant happened the other day, and we're going to kind of get down into the weeds of this. And it was a moment when the judges in the court said that they were referring a certain matter to the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yeah, so it was first brought up by Nikita Hand's legal team. They, on the first day of the appeal, they said that they believed that this...
Well, let's rewind a little bit further than that, because the point of the appeal, one of the main points of McGregor's appeal, he said was, or his legal team said, they had found new evidence. And the new evidence came in the form of two new witnesses who they told the court, and affidavits have been sworn in regard to this. There were a couple who had said they saw on the night in question, being the night that Nikita Hand returned home after this liaison with Conor McGregor and before she went to the Rotunda sexual assault unit and before she was seen by ambulance. They're saying that in between that time, they witnessed and heard a row between her and her then partner, Stephen Redmond, which was then to be sort of examined in a report by the Northern Ireland former state pathologist. And it was basically going to suggest that there was another way she could have got bruising, as opposed to what she alleges they came from the assault carried out by Conor McGregor. So that's the starting point.
That's the starting point. And obviously this is an appeal. It'd be very unusual to introduce new evidence. However, that was the case put forward by Conor McGregor's team, that they weren't aware of this evidence before, and it went to the heart of the matter. And they had it backed up with this expert report from the former Northern Ireland state pathologist, Jack Crane, and it was a whole case. It was a very key bit of the appeal. Now, just as the case opened, very dramatically, they said they were no longer putting this forward, this witness statement, and it was being withdrawn. And obviously, as soon as that, because the case was put forward in an affidavit, the media had access to this affidavit, all of these allegations against Nikita Hand, calling her effectively somebody who has lied under oath, and calling Stephen Redmond a man who has, calling him a wife beater effectively. I mean, gravely serious allegations. I mean, under any normal standard, about as serious as you can get. These allegations are made public because they're in an affidavit, and that's part of a court privilege. Reporters are allowed to cover it. So
Nikita Hand, firstly, absolutely denied this had happened, and she accused the two, through her legal team, the two witnesses as telling lies.
Yeah, and I mean, grave lies. So what happens was this evidence has been presented by the witnesses. We don't know exactly how it would have played out, but certainly they were going to be cross-examined, or their statement was going to be cross-examined. And then Nikita's Hand's team, in fairness, would have a chance. Now, she had obviously put in an affidavit saying it was lies, but, they would have been given a chance, I suppose, to tear this apart if they could.
It's important to look at the legal teams here because, what is interesting is it was Remy Farrell, the senior counsel, who represented McGregor throughout the trial. And when it came to this appeal, Mr. Remy Farrell handled the two other aspects of the appeal, which have nothing to do with these two witnesses.
Yeah.
These two witnesses were handled by a new senior counsel known as the King's Counsel in the North, a barrister called Mark Mulholland, who was brought in just for the appeal and appears to have just been focused on this aspect of the appeal. So he was the one who stood up in the court to say that they were withdrawing it. He said that he was withdrawing it on the basis that basically the court weren't going to accept it anyway because he couldn't tally the evidence with the report from the ex-state pathologist.
Yeah, because the ex-state pathologist, we had also heard at a previous hearing what was going to be in his report, and basically he'd looked at CCTV of Nikita Hand being brought to the hospital in the ambulance, and also had looked at CCTV from the hotel where she had been with McGregor earlier. And he had drawn a number of conclusions. I mean, they were quite clear. We had quotes from that report where he said he looked at bruising she had suffered and said that could be an alternative explanation. Obviously, he had written that report with the knowledge of the witness statements. So when it comes to court this week, it's say these things cannot tally or will not tally.
That's not the wording he used exactly, but he basically, you would have expected a legal team who had put the affidavits before the court, etc., to allow the court decide whether or not the witness evidence and the report were sort of, were working together. You'd expect that if you'd come this far with it, that you wouldn't preempt the judges of the three judges of the appeals court to refuse it.
Yes, so Mr. Mulholland actually, and you're right, like the term he used, he cited difficulty admitting evidence from a pathologist would corroborate an account given by the former neighbours, and he said this made the ground of appeal unsustainable and it was being withdrawn. Now,
and at that point, Nikita Hand's legal team stood up and they said that they were firstly, I think, shocked by this, but they sort of said that this evidence was before the court already. These affidavits had been put in, that it was widely reported in the media, this story and who these witnesses are. But the way it was being, dropped wasn't allowing Nikita Hand's
side of events.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in other words, she was kind of been left hanging in limbo. They weren't able to flash out what they said were lies because it was essentially being removed before they got the opportunity to cross-examine or to hear the evidence at that stage.
Yeah, and initially they said that it should be referred to the DPP for perjury. I mean, most people will know perjury is a criminal offence where somebody lies under oath. It's a criminal offence and it can carry a prison sentence. So they instantly called for this on the first day of the appeal. And on the second day, we heard the judges made that determination that they would.
But they didn't just specifically call for the witnesses to be examined for perjury. They also broadened that for McGregor to be examined to see if there was any incitement for them to commit perjury.
So the term is actually subordination. So the Perjury Act was actually updated in 2021. And this is one of the clauses in it. Obviously, there's the straightforward witnesses lying under oath, but subordination means effectively somebody who persuades or induces somebody to commit perjury on their behalf, which is not uncommon, in perjury cases. And as part of the law, it obviously most criminal offences, are initiated by Gardaí. Most criminal investigations are initiated by Gardaí, but the offence of perjury, judges can initiate action and they can send relevant documentation that comes before them. Obviously, during proceedings, they can send that information to the DPP, and this is obviously what has happened in this case. That's sort of a recognised procedure under law. If a judge comes across this in their courtroom, it doesn't have to be proven at that point. This is certainly not proven at this point, but the judges can make a determination that the DPP should investigate.
So before they made this determination, what subsequently happened was that John Gordon, senior counsel, who is Miss Hand's lawyer, sort of pushed this. Actually came into court then looking to bring an application. Okay,
came into on the second day. He brought it up instantly on the first day, but on the second day he made a further legal submission on
He attempted to make a legal submission on this, and with that, Mark Mulholland KC the guy from up north, stood up and said that he believed that his I suppose his rival senior counsel was going to try and use court privilege to get aspects of this into the media. So in other words, if John Gordon senior counsel had have been allowed make his application, and obviously Mark Mulholland was able to see what this application, what was in it, if he was able to say in open court, we believe this, this and this and this, the media could then report it, so the whole thing is out there. But Mulholland sort of jumped up to object to this. It was then decided that the 3 judges would see the application without it being read out in open court. So they read what Mr. Gordon's application was.
Yeah.
And that application was based on the fact that he believed that the 2 witnesses and McGregor should be, their activities basically should be sent forward to the Director of Public Prosecutions. And it was after reading his submission that the judges made the decision to send it to the DPP.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear that they'd made that decision before reading whatever was in his application, which related to evidence that Nikita Hand's team believed they have in relation to perjury and whatever you call it, subordination of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a curious way it's gone, because obviously a key part of Nikita Hand's, Mr. Gordon, her senior counsel's, what he said in court was that because of the fact that the allegations made by the 2 witnesses had become public, that it was it was highly disparaging and unfair criticisms of his client. And then this sort of comes back at him in a funny way, where McGregor's legal representative is saying you can't do that as well, where he's already said that it's all public about basically the attack on Nikita Hand's character, effectively from the witness statements.
So what does this all mean? Because a lot of that is it will interest people who know a little bit about the law or a big bit about the law. But for the general public, what it all means is that what has gone on and the story behind this whole witness, finding of these witnesses who come forward. And of course, it's interesting to remember that these witnesses came forward, they say, they contacted Conor McGregor on one of his social media accounts, and they contacted his sister, Erin McGregor, on her social media accounts to say that they had, this was led by Samantha O'Reilly, to say that both she and her partner, Stephen Cummins, had seen these. It was put that they hadn't really been watching the McGregor court case. They didn't realise it was on. They only basically saw it or became aware of it at the end and realised, put 2 and 2 together and realised they witnessed that particular night. This is how these witnesses, the court have been told, were discovered or found.
Yes, because
brought to the table.
There's a reason why that's relevant, because if those witnesses had been available to McGregor before the initial case started and he didn't use them, that would be his responsibility. He was allowed to present his case. So in order for them to possibly be admitted, the McGregor's legal team had to be totally unaware that these witnesses were available. That's one of the key criteria to allow their witness statements to be admitted. You had to prove that it was there was no possible way they could have known about this witness, and also that whatever information they had was credible and very key. So in theory, they fitted into that category.
Yeah.
Obviously, it hasn't ended like that.
So the DPP will be examining this submission that was due to be, this application that was due to be made to the court by John Gordon, senior counsel for Nikita Hand. We don't know what's in that because it wasn't read out in open court. The judges decided to read it and, silently, basically, to themselves. Undoubtedly, what's behind this is going to come out in the media over the coming days and weeks. I would lay money on that. But what I want to say is this. The DPP is going to be examining that application and whatever information is in it. If the DPP decides that this is a possible criminal matter, this has to go to the Garda Síochána, who then have to start to investigate. And they will probably, if it gets there, be investigating a lot of aspects around this trial. A lot of people, it probably will be an investigation that you would expect would widen away from the Miss O'Reilly, her partner Stephen Cummins, and any involvement of Conor McGregor in giving them an incentive to commit perjury.
Yeah, see, obviously, when the guards become involved, they have a different powers when they are investigating criminal matter than, for example, Nikita Hand's team would have available to them. Simply, guards can take phone records, financial records, any number of things would be available to them if it's part of a criminal investigation. That Nikita's Hand can seek discovery of McGregor's side and all of that, but they can't. They have limited access to stuff. So if the guards become involved, that's only an if at this point. The DPP will have to look at it and then make a decision. But the guards would have, as you said, much broader powers of investigation, and that would be a significant development.
Do we know anything about Miss O'Reilly and her partner Stephen Cummins? I know we have approached them and they've refused to answer any questions, but they're just regular.
Well, they're a regular couple. I think there's, if you look on the internet, there's a picture of them at a couple of events. Nothing major. No, we don't know much about them. We know that they have been contacted by various media outlets this week and said very little. They were unimpressed when the Sunday World called to the door a few months ago, straight after the witness statement came out. They're no longer living in the next to where Nikita Hand was living at that stage. They're out in West Dublin. But they're certainly at the centre of a huge storm now, and their names are being repeated in media outlets across the world. Whether they expected that or not, that is the case.
Well, I expect we'll be talking about this again.
I think we might.
I really do. Okay, thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.